Ambassador Lyra Davidson stood before the crystalline spires of the Celestial Palace on Arcturus Prime, her heart racing beneath her formal diplomatic attire. The iridescent towers stretched impossibly high into the violet sky, their surfaces refracting the light of 3 moons into mesmerizing patterns. After 2 years of tense negotiations via holographic channels, this was humanity's last chance for peace with the technologically superior Arcturian Empire. "Ready, Ambassador?" asked her security chief, Nathan Walsh, his hand resting casually on his concealed pulse weapon. "As I'll ever be," Lyra replied, straightening her midnight blue dress uniform. At 32, she was the youngest ambassador in Earth's diplomatic corps, chosen for this mission specifically because of her background in xenopsychology and her reputation for thinking outside traditional diplomatic boundaries. The great doors of the palace parted silently, revealing a grand hall filled with Arcturians, their bioluminescent skin creating an ethereal light show as they moved. At the far end, seated on a floating throne of pure energy, was Prince Talon Vor, heir to the Arcturian Empire. His silver skin seemed to pulse with internal light, and his eyes, all 4 of them, were the color of distant galaxies. Lyra had seen him in transmissions before, but nothing had prepared her for his presence in person. He was easily 7 feet tall, with an elegant, almost feline grace that belied his imposing size. As she approached, following the proper protocols she'd studied extensively, she noticed something unusual. He was wearing a human-style formal jacket over his traditional Arcturian robes. "Ambassador Davidson," Prince Talon's voice resonated through the chamber, carrying harmonics that made her skin tingle. "Welcome to Arcturus Prime." He descended from his throne, causing murmurs among the assembled court as he approached her directly instead of waiting for her to complete the traditional approach. "Your Highness," Lyra bowed precisely to the correct degree. "I bring greetings from Earth and Dash. Will you be my mate?" The words echoed through the suddenly silent chamber. Lyra's diplomatic training had prepared her for many scenarios, but not this one. She blinked, certain she had misheard. "I beg your pardon, Your Highness." Prince Talon's skin rippled with patterns of blue and gold, amusement and nervousness, if she remembered her xenobiology correctly. "I apologize if I've broken human protocol. I've spent the past 2 years studying your species, your cultures, your ways of forming bonds. The more I learned, the more fascinated I became." His eyes fixed on her with unnerving intensity. "Particularly with you." The assembled court erupted in whispers. Nathan took a step closer, his hand tightening on his weapon. "The traditional marriage between our peoples," Talon continued, "would create an unbreakable alliance. But more than that." His skin shifted to deep purple, sincerity. "I find myself drawn to your species' capacity for innovation, for feeling, for seeing possibilities where others see only obstacles. And in you specifically, I see someone who could help bridge our worlds." Lyra's mind raced. This was completely unprecedented, yet, wasn't this exactly the kind of unconventional solution she was known for? And hadn't she herself been fascinated by the prince during their brief interactions over holographic channels? "Your Highness," she said carefully, "such a proposal is unexpected and would require careful consideration of numerous diplomatic, cultural, and personal factors." Talon's skin flickered with amusement again. "Of course. Which is why I've prepared a series of cultural exchange sessions, allowing us to learn more about each other while the formal alliance terms are negotiated. Unless," his colors shifted to uncertainty, "you find the idea completely objectionable?" Lyra felt a smile tugging at her lips despite herself. "No," she said slowly, "not completely objectionable at all. Though I do have one question, Your Highness." "Please, ask." "The human-style jacket you're wearing, was that part of your research?" Talon's skin flushed with patterns she hadn't seen before. "Actually, I find human fashion quite intriguing. Your species makes up for its lack of bioluminescence with remarkable creativity in external adornment." A laugh escaped her before she could stop it, and to her surprise, Talon made a harmonious sound that she realized was his species' version of laughter. The First Minister stepped forward, his ancient face a map of concern. "Your Highness, this is highly irregular. The protocols for royal marriage need updating," Talon finished firmly. "Just as our relationship with Earth needs to evolve beyond ancient prejudices and fears." He extended his hand to Lyra in a perfectly executed human gesture. "Ambassador Davidson, would you join me in my private gardens to discuss this further?" Lyra looked at his offered hand, then at his earnest expression. She thought about Earth's desperate need for this alliance, about the potential for real change, and about the surprising flutter in her chest when he looked at her. "I would be honored," she said, placing her hand in his. His skin was warm, and where they touched, his bioluminescence created patterns that spread up his arm like constellation maps. As they walked toward the gardens, followed by their respective security details, Lyra couldn't help but wonder if this was madness or brilliance. But then again, hadn't some of humanity's greatest achievements started with exactly that question? The gardens of the Celestial Palace defied Earth's definition of the word. Crystalline structures that seemed to grow like plants emitted soft harmonies as they swayed in the warm breeze, while floating orbs of bioluminescent life forms drifted lazily through the air. Lyra walked beside Prince Talon, acutely aware of the gentle warmth radiating from his towering form. "I hope you don't mind," Talon said, his skin shifting through subtle shades of blue and gold, "but I've prepared something special." He gestured to an open pavilion ahead, where to Lyra's surprise, she saw what appeared to be a traditional Earth-style tea service alongside various Arcturian refreshments. "You've really been studying our customs," Lyra observed, noting the perfectly arranged cups and saucers. "I find humans fascinating," Talon admitted, ducking slightly to enter the pavilion. "Your species lacks our natural abilities for light communication, yet you've developed such intricate ways of expressing yourselves. Your art, your music, your traditions, they're all attempts to bridge the gap between inner experience and outer expression." Lyra settled onto a cushioned seat, watching as Talon demonstrated a surprisingly deft hand at pouring tea. "And what about your people's traditions? I notice several members of your court seemed concerned about your proposal." Talon's skin rippled with what she was beginning to recognize as his equivalent of a wry smile. The Arcturian Empire has always prided itself on tradition and protocol. The idea of their prince choosing a mate from a species they consider. He paused, his colors shifting diplomatically. "Primitive?" Lyra supplied with a raised eyebrow. "Unpredictable," he corrected, passing her a cup of tea. "Your species achieves in decades what takes others centuries. You adapt, evolve, create with remarkable speed. It frightens many of my people. But not you?" "No," he said softly, his 4 eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "It inspires me. Did you know I've watched recordings of every diplomatic session you've conducted? Your ability to find unexpected solutions, to see connections others miss, it's remarkable." Lyra took a sip of her tea to hide her blush. "Is that why you proposed? For my diplomatic innovations?" Talon's skin flushed deep purple, and the harmonic undertones in his voice deepened. "I proposed because in all my studies of human culture, I began to understand something my people have forgotten, the power of taking chances, of following what you humans call the heart." He leaned forward slightly. "Though I admit, I didn't expect you to be quite so beautiful in person." Before Lyra could respond, a sharp tone cut through the air. Her security chief, Nathan, touched his earpiece. "Ambassador, we're receiving urgent communications from Earth Command." Simultaneously, an Arcturian attendant approached, their skin flashing warning patterns. "Your Highness, the Outer Rim delegates have arrived early. They're demanding an immediate audience." Lyra and Talon shared a look of mutual understanding. Duty called, as it always did. But as they stood to attend to their respective responsibilities, Talon caught her hand. "Join me for dinner tonight," he said, his skin emanating patterns she hadn't seen before. "There's a traditional Arcturian bonding ritual I'd like to share with you, if you're interested in learning more about our ways." "A bonding ritual?" Lyra asked, intrigued despite her diplomatic caution. "Nothing that would constitute a formal commitment?" Talon's skin flickered with amusement. "Think of it as a cultural exchange. Though I should warn you, it involves bioluminescent resonance. You might find it intense." "Intense seems to be becoming our normal," Lyra replied with a smile. "I'd be honored, Your Highness." "Talon," he corrected softly. "When we're private like this, please call me Talon." The rest of the day passed in a blur of diplomatic meetings and cultural briefings. The Outer Rim delegates, representatives from the more conservative Arcturian colonies, made their disapproval of the potential human alliance clear through both words and bioluminescent displays. Lyra found herself repeatedly drawing on her diplomatic training to maintain composure in the face of their thinly veiled insults about human evolutionary inadequacies. As evening approached, her aide delivered a package to her quarters, a formal Arcturian robe modified to human proportions, its fabric embedded with light-responsive crystals. A note accompanied it, written in elegant English, "For tonight's ritual. The crystals will help you participate in the resonance." Lyra ran her fingers over the sophisticated garment, marveling at how it seemed to respond to her touch with subtle patterns of light. She thought about Earth's desperate need for this alliance, about the political implications of her growing connection with Talon, about the warnings from both human and Arcturian advisors about moving too quickly. Then she thought about the way Talon looked at her with those four remarkable eyes, the genuine curiosity and warmth in his questions about human culture, the gentle way he'd adapted his natural bioluminescent communication to forms she could understand. "Ambassador," Nathan's voice came through her door. "The prince's escort has arrived." Lyra took a deep breath and donned the robe, watching as it shimmered to life around her. Whatever this ritual entailed, whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew one thing with certainty: she was about to experience something unprecedented in human-Arcturian relations. And somehow, that thought excited her more than it should. The ritual chamber pulsed with living light, its crystalline walls reflecting and amplifying the bioluminescence of the assembled Arcturians. Lyra stood beside Talon, her borrowed robe responding to the ambient energy with subtle ripples of color. The modified garment allowed her to participate in the light speech of his people, though in a limited way. "The resonance of souls," Talon explained softly, "is traditionally performed between potential bond mates to test their spiritual harmony." His skin shifted through deep purples and blues, creating patterns that made Lyra's heart race. "It's not binding, but it is intimate." Before Lyra could respond, the First Minister stepped forward, his ancient face severe. "Your Highness, I must object one final time. This ritual is sacred to our people. To perform it with an evolutionary divergent species dash. Enough." Talon's skin flashed with unprecedented patterns of authority, causing the assembled court to step back. "Ambassador Davidson represents the best of her species: intelligence, adaptability, and courage. Qualities our empire desperately needs." Lyra touched his arm gently, feeling the warmth of his skin through the crystalline embedded fabric. "It's all right. I understand their concerns." She turned to address the First Minister directly. "Your traditions deserve respect. If my participation would be seen as sacrilege dash." "No," Talon interrupted, his four eyes fixed on her with fierce intensity. "They need to see. They need to understand." He extended his hand to her. "Do you trust me?" The chamber fell silent. Lyra looked at his offered hand, thinking of Earth's needs, of diplomatic consequences, of personal desires she'd been trying to ignore. "Yes," she said simply, placing her hand in his. The ritual began with a haunting melody that seemed to emerge from the crystal walls themselves. Talon guided Lyra to the center of the chamber, where a circle of luminescent energy pulsed beneath their feet. As they moved together, her robe began responding more strongly to the ambient energies, creating patterns that mirrored Talon's own bioluminescence. "Open your mind," he whispered, drawing her closer. "Feel the resonance." The music shifted, becoming deeper, more primal. Lyra gasped as she felt something brush against her consciousness, an alien presence that was unmistakably Talon. Through their connected hands, she began experiencing fragments of his thoughts, his feelings, his essence. She saw herself through his eyes, a fascinating creature of endless complexity, burning with an inner fire that drew him like a moth to flame. She felt his genuine curiosity about her species, his deep desire to bridge their differences, and underneath it all, a growing personal attraction that both thrilled and terrified him. In turn, Talon experienced her perspective, her awe at his otherworldly beauty, her diplomatic courage masking very human uncertainties, her growing affection for him warring with her duty to Earth. Their shared consciousness created unprecedented patterns of light that danced across the chamber walls, merging human emotion with Arcturian energy in ways never before seen. The First Minister's voice cut through their connection. "Impossible. The patterns, they're stabilizing." But before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Talon broke the ritual connection, his skin flashing warning patterns as a royal guard burst into the chamber. "Your Highness. The Outer Rim fleet has broken formation. They're moving against the Earth defense line." Lyra's diplomatic communicator buzzed simultaneously. "Ambassador," Nathan's urgent voice came through, "Earth Command reports multiple Arcturian vessels advancing with weapons hot. They're demanding explanations." The chamber erupted in chaos. Lyra felt the lingering echo of Talon's emotions, shock, anger, determination. Their eyes met in perfect understanding. Someone was trying to force their worlds into war. The Outer Rim conservatives, Talon's skin pulsed with rapid tactical patterns. "They'd rather see war than change. Then we need to show them change is inevitable." Lyra's mind raced, still heightened from the ritual connection. "Your Highness, I have an idea, but it's either brilliant or insane." Talon's skin rippled with what she now recognized as affection. "Those seem to be our specialty. The ritual showed our species can achieve harmony. What if we demonstrated that on a larger scale?" She gestured to her still glowing robe. "Your scientists modified this to let me participate in light speech. Could we adapt that technology quickly, create a way for our fleet commanders to communicate directly? A shared consciousness between fleet commanders?" The First Minister sounded scandalized. "Completely unprecedented." "Exactly," Talon said, his skin beginning to pulse with excitement. "No one would expect it. If we can get our fleet commanders to experience each other's perspectives directly, like we just did, they'll understand war benefits no one." Lyra finished. "But we'll need to move fast." Talon barked orders in the harmonic language of his people, sending aides rushing in various directions. Then he turned back to Lyra, taking both her hands in his. "This plan is dangerous," he said softly. "If it fails, then we fail together." Lyra squeezed his hands, watching their combined bioluminescence create new patterns of determination and hope. "Besides, I think we just proved we make a rather good team." His skin flushed with deep purple emotion. "Indeed we did." He touched her face gently. "Whatever happens next, know that the ritual proved what I already felt. You and I are meant to change the galaxy together." Around them, the palace mobilized for crisis response, but for a moment, they stood connected, their shared light pushing back the darkness of space and prejudice. The real test of their unconventional alliance was about to begin. The Royal Science Laboratory hummed with frantic energy as Arcturian technicians worked to modify the resonance technology. Lyra stood at a control panel beside Talon, her fingers flying over the holographic interface as they integrated Earth's communication protocols with Arcturian bioluminescent technology. "The Earth fleet is holding position," Nathan reported from his station, "but their patience won't last forever. The Outer Rim ships are still advancing." Talon's skin rippled with concentrated patterns as he made adjustments to a crystal matrix. The resonance technology was never designed for this scale. Creating a neural link between multiple commanders simultaneously could overload their neural pathways, the chief scientist interrupted, her skin flashing warning colors. "Your Highness, we need more time for testing." "Time is the one thing we don't have," Lyra said, studying the complex equations flowing across her screen. "But look at these harmonic patterns. If we modify the frequency to match human brainwave patterns." Talon moved behind her, his towering form casting shifting patterns of light across her workspace. "Yes," he said, reaching around her to adjust a setting. "And if we use the crystal matrix to amplify the resonance?" Their hands met over the controls, and for a moment, the lingering effects of their interrupted ritual flared to life. Lyra gasped as she felt his thoughts merge with hers again, their shared consciousness processing the problem from both human and Arcturian perspectives simultaneously. "That's it," they exclaimed together. Talon's skin pulsed with brilliant patterns of triumph as Lyra quickly implemented their shared insight. "The modifications are ready," Lyra announced, turning to face the assembled team. "But there's a catch. We'll need 2 anchors to stabilize the neural network, mine strong enough to handle the combined consciousness of both fleets." 2 anchors who have already established a resonance bond, Talon added, his 4 eyes meeting hers with meaning. The First Minister, who had been watching from the doorway, stepped forward in alarm. "Your Highness, you cannot risk yourself this way. If something goes wrong..." "If something goes wrong, we lose everything anyway," Talon replied. His skin shifted to deep, resolute patterns. "The Earth fleet will never trust us enough to link minds with our commanders unless we prove it safe. Unless we lead by example." Lyra touched his arm, feeling the warmth of his skin through her ceremonial robe. "Are you sure? This goes far beyond the traditional bonding ritual. The neural load could be devastating." Talon's bioluminescence created patterns she now recognized as tenderness. "I trust you," he said simply. "Do you still trust me?" Instead of answering, Lyra turned to the chief scientist. "How quickly can you get us linked to the fleet commanders?" The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of preparations. They were moved to a specially shielded chamber, surrounded by crystalline amplifiers. Lyra's ceremonial robe was modified further, additional resonance crystals woven into its fabric. Through it all, she maintained physical contact with Talon, their nascent bond humming between them like a live wire. "Fleet commanders are standing by," Nathan reported. "Earth ships are showing signs of weapons activation. Outer Rim fleet is nearly in firing range," added an Arcturian tactical officer, their skin flashing urgent patterns. Lyra and Talon took their positions in the center of the chamber, facing each other. The modified resonance crystals began to glow, responding to their proximity. "Remember," the chief scientist warned, "you'll be experiencing the consciousness of over 20 commanders simultaneously. Focus on each other. Use your bond as an anchor. Ready?" Talon asked softly, extending his hands. Lyra took them, feeling the familiar warmth of his skin. "Ready." The crystals flared to life, and consciousness exploded around them. Lyra felt her mind expanding, connecting with the Earth fleet commanders, their determination, their fear, their readiness to defend humanity at all costs. Simultaneously, she sensed Talon linking with the Arcturian commanders, their ancient pride and uncertainty about change flooding through him. The neural load was overwhelming. Lyra gasped, her knees buckling, but Talon held her steady. Their personal bond flared stronger, creating a sanctuary in the storm of merged consciousness. Through their connection, they began to guide the commanders' experiences, helping them understand each other's perspectives. Earth commanders experienced the weight of Arcturian tradition, the fear of losing their identity to rapid change. Arcturian commanders felt human determination, their drive to prove themselves worthy of the galaxy's respect. And through it all, Lyra and Talon's own story, their willingness to bridge differences, to risk everything for understanding, flowed as an undercurrent. "The Outer Rim fleet is powering down weapons," someone announced distantly. "Earth fleet standing down as well," came another voice. But Lyra and Talon were barely aware of the external celebrations. Their consciousness had merged more deeply than ever before, creating patterns of light that transformed the chamber into a kaleidoscope of human emotion and Arcturian energy. In that merged state, they shared not just thoughts but souls, their hopes, their fears, their growing love for each other laid bare. When the connection finally faded, they found themselves on their knees, still holding hands, their foreheads touching. Talon's skin rippled with exhaustion and joy, while Lyra's robe shimmered with residual energy. "It worked," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Of course it did," Talon replied, his harmonics rich with emotion. "We make rather good anchors for each other." The First Minister approached, his ancient face transformed with wonder. "The fleet commanders, they're requesting a formal peace conference. They say they understand now. They want to learn from each other." Lyra smiled up at Talon, squeezing his hands. "I suppose we've started quite a change in the galaxy." His skin flushed with love and pride. "We've only just begun." 1 month after the near conflict, the Celestial Palace's Great Hall had been transformed. Crystalline arches pulsed with harmonized light patterns that merged Arcturian bioluminescence with human color theory. Delegates from both species mingled freely, many humans wearing modified ceremonial robes that allowed them to participate in light speech, while Arcturians sported elements of Earth fashion. Lyra stood before a mirror in her preparation chamber, watching the play of light across her wedding garments. The dress combined Earth's traditional white with Arcturian crystalline technology, creating a garment that responded to her emotions with subtle patterns of light. Her month as Earth's official ambassador to Arcturus Prime had brought countless changes to both societies, but none more significant than what would happen today. "The media's calling it the wedding of two worlds," Nathan commented, adjusting his formal uniform. He'd finally stopped keeping his hand near his weapon when Arcturians approached. "Though I think they're missing the point. This isn't just a wedding, it's a revolution." "A peaceful one," Lyra added, touching the resonance crystal that hung at her throat, Talon's gift after their shared consciousness experience. The number of human Arcturian cultural exchange programs already in development is staggering. A soft chime announced the arrival of the First Minister, his ancient face now bearing a warm expression she'd never seen in those early days. "Ambassador, or should I say, Your Highness-to-be, it's time." As Lyra walked toward the Great Hall, she reflected on the whirlwind of changes the past month had brought. The shared consciousness experience between the fleet commanders had sparked a transformation in both societies. Humans and Arcturians had discovered they could learn from each other's strengths, human adaptability and innovation combining with Arcturian wisdom and tradition to create something entirely new. The great doors parted, and Lyra's breath caught at the sight of Talon waiting for her. He wore a perfect blend of Earth formal wear and traditional Arcturian robes, his silver skin creating patterns of joy and love that made the crystals in her dress respond in harmony. Their eyes met across the chamber, and she felt the echo of their bond, stronger now after weeks of working together to reshape their worlds. The ceremony itself combined traditions from both cultures. They exchanged Earth-style vows while standing within a circle of Arcturian resonance crystals, their words accompanied by patterns of light that expressed emotions too deep for any language. When Talon took her hands for the final bonding ritual, the entire hall gasped as their combined bioluminescence created unprecedented patterns of beauty. "The humans have a saying," Talon said softly as they completed the ritual patterns. "That love conquers all." And the Arcturians? Lyra asked, feeling their consciousness beginning to merge in the familiar, wonderful way. We say that true harmony creates new light. His skin rippled with joy. I believe we've proven both sayings correct. Their kiss sealed more than just their marriage. As their consciousness merged one final time, the resonance crystals amplified their connection throughout the hall. Every being present, human and Arcturian alike, felt the echo of their bond, the promise of what their peoples could achieve together. Later, at the celebration, Lyra and Talon moved among their guests, their merged light patterns creating a constant dance of color and emotion. Scientists from both worlds huddled in corners, excitedly discussing new possibilities for combining their technologies. Diplomats who had once eyed each other with suspicion now engaged in animated conversations about cultural exchange programs. Look, Talon said, guiding Lyra to a balcony overlooking the capital city. The future we imagined. Below them, the city sparkled with both traditional Arcturian bioluminescence and newly installed human lighting designs. In the streets, humans and Arcturians moved together freely, many wearing variations of the modified ceremonial robes that allowed for light speech communication. Children from both species played together in parks specially designed to accommodate their different physical needs. It's beautiful, Lyra said, leaning against her new husband's tall form. Though I suspect some of the more traditional elements on both sides are still having difficulty adjusting. Talon's skin rippled with amusement. Change is never easy. But as someone very wise once told me, the best diplomatic solutions are often the ones that seem either brilliant or insane. And which was this? Lyra asked, turning to face him with a smile. Both, he replied, his 4 eyes shining with love. Definitely both. His skin created patterns that made her resonance crystal hum with joy. Though I must admit, when I first proposed, I never imagined it would lead to all this. No? Lyra raised an eyebrow. The great strategic genius of the Arcturian Empire didn't foresee the consequences of his actions? I was too distracted by a certain human diplomat who kept finding unexpected solutions to impossible problems. His hand cupped her face gently. Though I suppose that's what I love most about your species, you make the impossible seem merely improbable, and the improbable become reality. Their joined consciousness hummed with shared purpose and love as they looked out over their transformed world. The next day would bring new challenges, new opportunities to bridge their differences and create something unprecedented in the galaxy. But for now, they simply stood together, their merged light casting new patterns across the ancient crystal walls of their home, writing the first pages of a story that would change the universe forever.